Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another week of JW6 Online. I'm so glad you guys are hanging out with me today. We are in week 2 of our Do Something series. Last week, Grace was out here talking about what it means to face injustice. She defined injustice as anything that is unfair, that is not right, and that is unequal. This week, I want to talk about what it means to face injustice and that we don't have to face injustice alone. Now, for a lot of us, unfortunately, the term injustice brings up a lot of pain in our life. Maybe something that we've experienced in our own life, or maybe somebody in our family or a good friend of ours that has experienced something that's really, really unfair. And if you look around us, if you look in the news, look on social media, there's injustice everywhere in our world. So how do we face that as Christians? How do we face that with our family, with our friends? How do we even face it if it's in our own lives, not just happening around us? Now today, I want to talk to you guys about a story that a lot of us know. If you've grown up in the church, you've probably heard this story before. So I don't want you to check out. I don't want you to just ignore it. I don't want you to be like, I've heard this story before. I'm not going to listen today. It's a very important story, and I think today especially we can look at it from a completely different angle as we talk about what it means to face injustice. Now the story I'm talking about is about 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these are gentlemen who lived in the Old Testament, and they were conquered. Their land was conquered by a king named Nebuchadnezzar. And he took these men and a lot of other people into captivity to work for him. So these guys grew up, they trained underneath the king, and they grew in stature, they grew in knowledge, and they ended up working in the king's high courts. Now one day the king decided, I'm going to create this idol, this huge statue about 90 feet tall, made out of gold, and I'm going to have my people worship it. When the music plays, the people need to bow down and worship this idol that I have made. Now, the 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, being God followers, knew that God had said there should be no other God before me. So they shouldn't bow down and worship anybody except the one true God. So the music plays, and people start to bow down and worship this idol that the king has made. But these 3 men didn't. All of a sudden, they've got people tattling on them, going to the king and saying, hey, these 3 employees of yours, these guys that say they follow you, that are part of your crew, they're not listening. They're not following what you said they should do. They're not bowing down and worshiping the idol that you've created. You should do something about this. Now, the king had been very clear when he created the idol that if people didn't bow down and worship, they had one choice. They're going to the fiery furnace. They either bow down and worship and they're good, but if they don't, they're going to die. It's the death penalty for them. So these guys don't bow down and worship. They get called basically into the king's office, and he says, you know what? I'm going to look past it this one time, but I'm going to give you one more shot. When the music plays, you need to bow down and worship the idol. So the music plays, but they don't bow down. They look at the king and they say, King, Master. They treat him with respect, but they say, you know what? We worship one God and one God only. And we believe that God can save us from your hand. But even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow down and worship the idol that you've created. So King Nebuchadnezzar has a tizzy. He goes into a fit of rage and he says, you know what? Send them to the fiery furnace. I'm done with these guys. I gave them a second chance. They still didn't listen. They're done. So he has the furnace heated 7 times hotter than normal. He has his strongest guards, his strongest soldiers come and tie the 3 men, and they get thrown into the fiery furnace. Now the furnace is so hot that the guards that take them and throw them in actually die because of the heat of the furnace. Now, that's a terrible thing to be thrown into a fiery furnace. That is an injustice. The fact that these men were taken away from their homeland, that's injustice number 1. Number 2, they're being forced to go to death because they won't listen and bow down to an idol that the king has created. So they're experiencing this grave injustice. They're thrown into the fiery furnace. But then something amazing happens. King Nebuchadnezzar is sitting by as these people are thrown into the fiery furnace, and he stands up and he looks in the fire and he starts counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait a minute. I thought we only threw 3 guys in the furnace. So he starts talking to the guys that are all around him, these people that had witnessed this act of injustice happen. He says, didn't we throw 3 guys in there? There looks like there's 4, and one of them looks like a son of the gods. He's like shining. So he yells into the fiery furnace, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out. and they walk out of the fiery furnace. And they stand in front of the king. They don't smell like smoke. Their clothes are not burned, and not even a hair on their head is singed from the fire. And the king is just in awe, and he bows down in front of them and says, if anyone ever badmouths the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I will surely cut them into pieces and turn their houses into rubble. Nebuchadnezzar realizes they weren't wrong. They were absolutely right to worship their God, and it's very evident that their God is the Most High God and is super powerful because He's saved them from the fiery furnace. So the law was changed. There was a change because of these three men. They stood up for what was right. They stood up in the face of injustice together, but they weren't alone. And that's what I want you guys to hear from me today. If you are in the middle of injustice, or if someone in your family or your friends are experiencing injustice, you are never alone. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had each other, but not only did they have each other, they had God. When they were thrown into that fiery furnace, the fourth person in the fire, we don't know who it was. There's Bible scholars and researchers that have differing opinions, and I don't know the answer. Was it God? Was it Jesus? Was it an angel? I don't know. At this point, it doesn't matter. It just means that God showed up. And He showed these men in a tangible, physical way that you are not alone when you suffer injustice. I will always be with you. And that promise that He made to them thousands of years ago is still true for each and every one of us today. If you are in the middle of a situation right now that you are facing and it is super unfair, it's injustice, I want to remind you that you are never alone. There are people here who care about you, and God will never leave your side. Sometimes I feel like when I face something that's really unfair, it can be hard for me to go to God and talk to Him about it because I feel like, He just doesn't get it. God doesn't understand this. He's God after all, right? He won't understand that I face something that's unfair, that's injustice. But I'm reminded that He does get it. He does understand it. If we take a look at Jesus' life, His earthly ministry, and the fact that He went and died a criminal's death, the only innocent, perfect, spotless man to ever walk the face of the earth, died a criminal's death. Talk about the most grievous act of injustice in the world, in the history of the world. The only man who has never sinned was punished as if he did. Jesus died on a cross, a criminal's cross, for the mistakes that I've made, for the mistakes that you've made, for the sin that has blocked our view, has blocked our relationship with God. That is injustice. So when we face things that are not right, that are unfair, we got to remind ourselves that Jesus does understand. He gets it in a way that we will never fully understand because He is truly the only man who never sinned and yet was punished as if he did. So if you're going through something right now, or a family member is going through something right now, the first thing I would encourage you to do is to talk to Jesus about it. He gets it. He understands. He wants to comfort you. He feels the pain that you are feeling. He is walking through that pain with you. So don't forget that Jesus is there with you. Number 2, remind yourself that you're not alone. You may feel alone, and I know over the last 13 or 14 months here as a human race, we have been isolated. We have felt the most alone some of us have ever felt in our lives. But when you face injustice, you are never alone. There are always people who are here to listen to you, who want to walk with you, encourage you, and cheer you on as you continue to walk in your relationship with God and to walk through the hard things that you are facing. Maybe for you, it's time to talk to somebody. To talk to a trusted friend, an adult, a parent, a grandparent about something that you're experiencing. Maybe you're getting bullied physically or emotionally or on cyberbullying online on your social media apps. Maybe it's time to talk to somebody. Just remember you are never alone. Now there's a verse I want to share with you guys. This week, this will be our memory verse. It'll be out on our website, and if you come to JW6, we'll have a card for you guys to take home to memorize it. And it comes out of Psalm 139, verses 23 through 24. And the psalmist writes this: "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Now you might be thinking, that's a great verse, Jordan, but why are we asking God to search our hearts? Well, the truth is, guys, we may not be experiencing injustice in our own lives, but we may be participating in injustice. You know, King Nebuchadnezzar in the story was actively participating in injustice. He was, putting out a death penalty over something that should not have happened. But there were also people in the crowd that could have stood up and said something too. Those people are also participating in injustice. And sometimes in our own lives, if we're honest, we participate in injustice, maybe consciously or unconsciously. Maybe somebody makes a joke that's really not cool. Maybe it's a racist joke, and we laugh. Or maybe we listen to music that's really degrading to women. A countless number of things that we do on a daily basis that could be fueling the fire of injustice instead of putting it out. So I say that verse, and I want that verse to be our verse for this week because I think it's important for us to go before God and say, you know what? God, I need you to search my heart. If there's anything in me, any injustice that's conscious or unconscious that I'm participating in, would you lead me out of that? Would you change my heart? Would you bring me to a place where I'm not participating in that anymore and I'm actively fighting for what is right? I'm listening to the people that are experiencing these injustices and I'm doing something about it. So as we come to the end of today's lesson, remember that this is a place, Jacob's Well, JW6, when you guys get up into JW Middle School and someday JW High School, this is a place where there are people who are listening to you, who are praying with you, who are learning from you, and who are cheering for you. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this time this morning to be with our JW6 students, even online. Lord, as we talk about a story that's so familiar to so many of us, it can be easy to just gloss over it. But I pray today, as we heard those words again of the injustice that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego suffered through, Lord, that you delivered them, that you stepped in and you saved them from that injustice. And you proved to them and you proved to us that we are never alone in the fire. Lord, I specifically just pray today for my students, that if they are walking through something right now that is unfair, that is not right, they're getting treated unequally, that you would just show up in their lives, that you would remind them that they are not alone, that you are with them, and that there are other people here in their church community who love them and care for them. In your name. Amen. All right, guys, just two really quick announcements before I let you guys go. We have one more JW6 night coming up on May 12th, so make sure you come out for that. That's a Wednesday night from 6:30 to 8 p.m. Thank you to the 27 sixth graders that came out on Wednesday this last week. It was a ton of fun to have you guys in the building. The second thing is our camp forms are now out. Middle school camp is June 20th through the 25th. You guys can grab forms here in person at JW6. You can find them on our website or also in our social media bios. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will see you next time.